Good morning, everyone. Good morning and welcome. We are letting everyone in. So if you were in the waiting area, thank you for joining us this morning. Let me just give it another minute. Good morning, everyone. Gonna give it a few more seconds. Thank you for joining us this morning. You see our numbers are growing, so I'm going to wait until it's a little bit more stabilized. In the meantime, it is 9:01. It is November 19th, so thank you so much for joining us for our public webinar. And I would love to know who's out there, what campus, what organization you're representing. So please use our Q&A chat. The Q&A allows you to put a post, and then on our end, it'll just help us really think through who's here with us today. Thank you. All right. It is 9:01. The numbers are stabilized, so I think that's about most of the folks that will be joining us today. Thank you for being here. This webinar is being recorded and it'll be uploaded on our website. In particular, you will find this webinar under the Student Success Blueprint under About. So if you go to the CSAC website under About, that's where you will see this webinar. Good morning. My name is Dr. Daisy Gonzalez, and I am the Executive Director of the California Student Aid Commission. And this morning, you're joining us for another public webinar where we are discussing the CSAC Student Success Blueprint, Achieving Equity in Higher Education. This is our 5-year strategic plan. It is currently in draft form. And so this webinar is really focused on 2 things today. Number 1, we want to share with you the progress that we have made to date. This is work that started late July. And so to get here in such a short amount of time is nothing short of extraordinary. And so thank you for the feedback that you have provided us. That's what has allowed us to be here today. There are 2 main goals. Number 1, we want to walk you through our progress when we think about our leading metrics to advance this work. And then we want to give you transparency into what we call strategic directions. And these are the internal changes that CSAC will need to make, particularly when we think about 3 key areas: partnerships, policies, and resources. The other part of this webinar will also cover all of the feedback that has been received to date in major themes, and then how we plan on making that integration, how your feedback has informed the way that we're thinking about our final draft. So let's move on to the next slide, please. The next slide, I want to just quickly show you a couple of reminders. You can turn on your closed caption. It is available as a part of this webinar. We continue to use the Q&A chat box. Of course, this is for questions, for comments. There's a whole team behind the scenes answering questions. I also want to encourage you to visit our landing page. So if this is your first time hearing about the CSAC Student Success Blueprint, we do have a whole landing page. This QR code will take you there as well. And we are still asking for your feedback. The QR code is going to take you directly to the feedback. And then if you want to pivot and go back to the landing page, there will also be a link there. And then lastly, as you're thinking about your social media, we know some of you are very active online. You can follow us at California Student Aid. And then there are 3 major hashtags that are primarily being used to discuss this work. I also just want to quickly pause here and say, we know that we have the 25-26 financial aid application cycle starting very soon, December 1st. And we know that some of you are at the same time tracking both things, as we all are. So we want to encourage you to attend our December 2nd webinar from 9 to 10 a.m. We are launching a new webinar series at CSAC. It will be a part of convening us as a community on a monthly basis to give you federal updates, changes in tools from CSAC, and then provide you with experts on the field, all of you who are here today, to share your expertise on the work that you're doing regionally to help our students complete their financial aid applications, both FAFSA and CADA. So with that, I want to ask you to look into the chat box. The team just put the link to that. It is not a topic for today's conversation, but we do want to address that this morning, given the fact that beta testing continued at the federal level. This is a part of their last phase. It is open. However, here in California, we are officially opening both the FAFSA and the CADA on December 1st. So we hope that you can join us on the 2nd, as we will have a full conversation about this together and uplift everyone as we are all in and ready. Next slide, please. With that, this is our focus today. I just walked you through a welcome and goals. I'm going to head back into thinking about the blueprint and the feedback that we have received. Then I'm going to hand it over to the incredible team at CSAC. I will have Deputy Director Jessica Moldoff walk us through the leading metrics as we are thinking about them. You can also find them on our landing page. And then as a part of the work, we want to really focus in on our implementation framework and the strategic directions. Again, this is the internal action that CSAC will take. There will be 4 presenters during that part of our webinar today: our Chief Deputy, Catalina Missler, our Deputy Director, Jake Brimner, Deputy Director Tay Kang, and Deputy Director Jessica Moldoff. And then at the end, I'll come back in, walk us through some next steps and some important reminders about where we're headed next. So next slide, please. So if this is your first webinar with us and you are hearing about this blueprint, I wanted to walk you very briefly to what you might have missed in our first webinar, or if you didn't get a chance to join us for our summit, and just really set the context very quickly before we jump in as to why we are doing this. So why is it important for CSAC to have a role in student success? And what is that appropriate role? You know, I started this work many, many years ago as a 3rd grade dual immersion teacher. And my background has always been in education, research, and education finance. And I've spent the last 6 years working in the largest system of public higher education. And then I took on this role to serve Californians and really think about what college affordability would look like for an entire state. Of course, I've had a front row seat at all of the transformation that higher education has taken here in California. So California is leading the way. But there are so many different transformations happening right now. And the one thing that we need to catch up on is financial aid. So this slide shows you a little bit of that transformation that is happening. And it's happening at all of our 4-year sectors, certainly at community colleges, and all in an effort to ensure that more Californians had access to financial aid and higher education. So when we think about adult learners, these are the 6.2 million Californians. Many of you know them all too well in your research, and you've been actively reaching these Californians to bring them back to higher education, to earn degrees and credentials. So at scale, higher education has been thinking about how do we serve adult learners more intentionally and faster, and how do we get them to their end goal faster? At the same time, in higher education, we are still wrestling with increasing cost. That's where the college affordability component comes in. And the fact that we have different definitions of college affordability by region, by segment, and then of course, family situation. So that individualized situation for our students. We also have extensive research, including research at CSAC, that shows us that food and housing insecurity is on the rise. And then most recently, but of course, this is not new, ongoing fear and instability for undocumented students and families. And last year, we learned a hard lesson around mixed status families as we are thinking about both the higher ed work and the financial aid component of support. We also have the state of California leading the way, creating a state master plan for career education. That work is moving forward, and many of you have been a part of that. And then a lot of work being done for transfer for the last 4 years, very intentional about thinking about the pathways between systems to help students earn 4-year degrees. You've also seen the expansion of dual enrollment, and then, of course, additional pathways for incarcerated learners. Most recently at the federal level, catching up to provide access to Pell, which is a financial aid tool for incarcerated learners. I mention this here because we are now at that crossroad of what it means to support students at scale with a new added challenge. A new added challenge as there might be federal changes, and we are all kind of looking to the future, but also trying to stay optimistic about the future. So what does that mean for California? Next slide. Thank you, Shelveen. Next slide. Thank you. Perfect. What that means for California is CSAC. It's how do we come together to support the work that our higher education segments are doing. And so for us, and when I started at CSAC, it became a conversation about what is our role? What is the role of financial aid? What is the role of CSAC as California is getting ready to not just take this work to scale, but maybe launch new innovations, particularly for career education, CTE. So this work led us down the route of creating a 5-year strategic plan. And so what you see in front of us is a very clear definition of what is the CSAC Student Success Blueprint, and then what do we at CSAC believe about this work and our partnership with other segments. So I want to read this to you out loud. The CSAC Student Success Blueprint, Achieving Equity in Higher Education, is a 5-year strategic plan to support Californians and education segments to provide affordable and equitable higher education opportunities for today's students and future learners. CSAC believes that through collective efforts, we can address statewide workforce needs and economic mobility at scale. 2 key things that should stand out for you. Number 1, it is really thinking about the learners that we serve today and the learners that we serve tomorrow. This is really important in financial aid because we still don't have financial aid at scale, including financial aid for adult learners at CSAC. And then more importantly, when you look at the statement on beliefs, we really see ourselves at CSAC as that critical partner to uplift and support the work of our higher education segments. Of course, at the heart of all of this is the CSAC mission, which is our deep belief that every single Californian should have access to affordable higher education. Next slide, please. With that, I want to move forward and share with you where we are. You heard in the last webinar, we have very clear goals, just 3. It's really important that I share that with you. 3 clear goals. So CSAC is going to be leading equitable access, equitable support, and then equitable success. But then how do we get there? We get there through dreaming about the outcomes that need to exist. It is a 5-year strategic plan. So by the year 2030, what is it that needs to change in California? Then how do we make sure that we're measuring our progress? Number 1, that we are making progress, that we're headed in the right direction. And then what is it that CSAC is going to need to do differently internally? And that is through the way that we partner, through the policies that we have, both internal and external, and then the resources that we create for our institutions, but also that we secure for our students. Those 3 areas are still in the refinement stage, and that's why we still need your feedback. So for today, this webinar is going to focus on the leading metrics and strategic directions. 2 areas that over the next 2 weeks, we're going to continue to innovate, to change, really, and to get a lot clearer. So thank you for being here and giving us that feedback. Next slide. These are the 3 goals that I mentioned. One of the things that has helped me as I'm presenting on this and that I wanted to share with you is, CSAC has always been a leader in access. We are that state agency, right? We are a commission that has always created access to increase statewide awareness and participation of financial aid in the state of California. That's why we exist. So this is the area that we know we do well. And when it comes to creating a goal, an equity goal on access, we also know that we need to do it at scale. And we need to be a lot more intentional thinking about our data. When it comes to support, we've always kind of dabbled in this area. So for me, it's the things we do well, the things we've started. CSAC has done incredible work when we think about connecting students to basic needs, in particular other social services, and how we have better handoffs with institutions when our students do qualify for aid. So for me, the equitable support is about removing financial aid barriers for students as they enter their educational pathway. And this is the area that we want to lean into because we started the work and now we need to be a little bit more intentional about it. And then equitable success. It's what is at the heart of everything that we do. And we need to ensure that that is truly what we are doing here. For us at CSAC, equity and success, so equitable success is about empowering our students to complete their education. That means that we are increasing the number of students who are receiving their aid, not just because they're eligible, but because they need to receive it on time and in a predictable manner. And that's truly what's going to help us understand what needs to exist in the state of California if we need every single student to succeed. So these are our 3 goals. Next slide. And we have been workshopping and asking for feedback in all of these different spaces. I won't walk you through all of them, but I do want to mention that our online feedback form remains open. I have a few more presentations in the next 2 weeks. And at the end of this presentation, I'll walk you through other opportunities where you can come and provide us your feedback, but also listen to see what updates we have made. Next slide, please. So your feedback to date, though, this is really important. So as you hear the next set of presenters share where we are today, I wanted to walk you through what is influencing that. We have an online portal where many of you have submitted your feedback, very extensive feedback, or even just quick feedback. Even one sentence is really important to us. And here's what we are hearing from you. Number 1, we're hearing a lot of gratitude for this initial draft and gratitude that there is a focus on student success. And we're grateful to see that feedback and that it's meeting some of the needs that some of you have, and of course, the vision for what CSAC should be. But the other set of feedback is really wanting us, CSAC, to have a very clear definition of equity, and in particular, for CSAC to address racial equity in financial aid. At the same time, the feedback calls us to really create a statewide college affordability definition. And I have seen that in the feedback that we have received multiple times. And in the next slide, I'll show you how we're thinking about this feedback that we've received. Number 3, there's an extensive set of feedback that was submitted where many of you are asking us to really think about our role prior to 12th grade. So as we are expanding to enrollment in the state of California, what does it mean to create a relationship with students and families sooner? And who are those partners that can get us there? So thank you for that feedback. And then there's a lot of research and a lot of emails and feedback that we received around opportunities for partnerships. And that makes us really excited. So some of your feedback covers both partnerships and resources that are needed in K through 12 and across higher education practitioners. Some of those are tools that CSAC needs to develop. Others are more regional partnerships that CSAC should consider. And then number 5, a lot of feedback lately, especially with what is happening at the federal level, to have a stronger focus on K to students and specifically call out those students as a part of the student success blueprint for CSAC. So these are the 5 major themes of what we have heard from many of you. Next slide, please. So here's how we're incorporating that work and that feedback. In our final report, which will be an attachment to our commissioner agenda, that should go live around December 2nd. Our commissioner meeting is on December 5th. There will be a 10-page report. This is going to be the official document of the CSAC Student Success Blueprint, single-spaced, very, very, just 10 pages, very simple. As a part of that, we will include an equity definition. So if any of you have a working definition that you can share with us that you would like us to integrate, please go to our landing page. We would love to see your own definitions. CSAC, of course, has one. When it comes to college affordability, we love that feedback. It is absolutely something that is needed. We might need to think through this over a period of time, meaning we will absolutely lean in and say, yes, CSAC needs to have one. But I think it's work that we need to do in partnership with many of you. We want to make sure that we don't lose the segments, reality of our students, the regional context for families and students. And so as we think about a broad definition, we also need to be mindful of all the work that has been done in prior years and being led by many of your organizations to make sure that we can have one. So what you might see in our final draft is a deep commitment to say college affordability could be defined in these terms, and we are committing to the work of creating a statewide college affordability definition in our work. When it comes to the feedback around defining student populations that we seek and track, there was a lot of feedback related to the partnerships that folks want us to create. We want to add that in as a part of defining the student populations that we are going to serve, how we disaggregate that data, and then are the reality of what data exists at CSAC and whether that's possible, as a way to really track and get at both the missing data and the partnerships that we need to launch. So you are likely to see that in our final draft by adding a whole new section to that final report. Then, as a part of receiving the feedback related to collaborations, there was some feedback around how do we have a greater focus on DACA students. This we also see as an opportunity to think about new collaborations and data sharing. It's really important for me to share with you that as we think about reaching students at an earlier stage, that was one of the feedbacks, wanting CSAC to work with students prior to their senior year. There are a lot of key statewide partners that we can work with, everything from BICE to our colleagues at CCGI. All of those folks are reaching the same population. And so we would want to work with all of you as we're adding that intent, really calling in the partnerships, the resources that we will need together. We also know that many of our CalSOAP directors are already doing this work. And so part of reaching students earlier is a part of making sure that they have those resources. And then lastly, we'll be integrating a new section that helps us really address the feedback that we received around tools that our practitioners need. So at the local level, across all of our segments, there's a section of the feedback that we received around how we might share information differently from CSAC, how we might eliminate silos. So you'll see a commitment to that work, to reducing the burden on staff, so our practitioners, our financial aid experts, under strategic direction. So in that final report, that's where you will see us responding to a lot of that feedback. Next slide, please. So here's where we're headed next. I want to hand it over to the CSAC team because now we're going to walk you through what is going to be new information. This is not necessarily on our website. Certainly the strategic directions are not there. So if you're here joining us for the first time, welcome. If you are returning, this is new information of where we are today. And I want to hand it over to cover the leading metrics. Thank you to our Deputy Director, Jessica Moldoff, for walking us through that.
All right, thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. So yes, as Dr. Gonzalez said, for this webinar, we're going to be building off of the one we had previously. Previously, we introduced our 3 equity goals and 9 outcomes underneath those goals. But for this webinar, we're going to focus on more of the details. What does it mean? What do these outcomes look like? What do these goals look like for CSAC, especially, and how are we integrating equity into all of them? So here I'll be introducing the leading metrics, many of which are metrics we currently have, and then the team will be providing the strategic directions that are really what's going to be the details of how we achieve these outcomes with these metrics. So next slide, please. So our 2025-2030 leading metrics are, like I said, many things we already have and things that we can watch closely because it's data that we receive every day. The first is the application participation by segment. So when we're receiving FAFSAs and California Dream applications, how many of those are from students who are attending the community colleges or the UCs or CSUs? And then similarly, how do those applications get converted into award offer rates? So where are we seeing students that are eligible for our different programs? Where could we potentially expand eligibility to make the students more equitably served within each segment? And also the paid rates by segment. Are there any segments that are maybe having challenges with paid rates? Potentially, there are some students who are facing more eligibility barriers when actually converting their offer into a payment. Those are all things that we can track. Similarly, we can also track all 3 of these things, the applicant, the award, and the paid recipient, by the actual student demographics, which is really where the equity comes in. Because the question is, are we actually mirroring California's population? Are we mirroring regional trends? Are the students that are being served by our grants the students that are we providing equitable access and support and success to these students? And it's really by making sure that these three pieces are tracked by all these different demographic metrics, because it's only by regularly assessing and disaggregating the data that we can really see whether or not we're being successful. Our overall paid rate could look great, but if we then break that out into individual subgroups, then we could really start to see where there are challenges. Are there certain regions in California that need more support, more outreach, particularly those regions that may not currently be served by our CalSO programs? Are there places where we can provide more resources in order to serve students equally across the state? And with that, I will pass it back to Chief Deputy Catalina Missler.
Thank you, Jessica. Good morning and welcome, and thank you all who have joined us here today. It's great news coming from the Student Aid Commission. So you've heard all what Dr. Gonzalez has shared with us in our new Student Success Blueprint. So many of you may be asking, so how is CSAC going to get there? What does it mean for CSAC to implement this framework with goals and outcomes for the next 5 years to 2030? Well, to get there, we're shifting how we do our work. First, we started internally and we thought about everything we are currently doing to be student-centered, first and foremost. And then think about what we haven't done before and how that could produce new results. So what is it that needs to change for us to do the work and to be successful? It's our resources, partnerships, and policies. For our resources, we need to secure resources at a different rate and outside of state resources. That includes financial support, philanthropy, individuals and organizations on the ground who work with students and families, and so those who also need us in their communities. So new opportunities for interagency agreements, new opportunities for new work. Our partnerships, those partnerships need to shift because we need the right partners and to work with them in a new and a different way. And this includes all of our partners, our segments, our institutions, our financial aid administrators, our equity champions, philanthropy, and many other stakeholders. Our partnerships, from sharing data to simplify financial aid processes for students, to professional development to make sure the correct information about our programs gets to students who may have no other support but that one contact that they have to make a decision. And that's why it's important that we continue to provide information and resources to our partners and those who are working on the ground and those who are working behind the desks at the campuses and doing what they can to help those students that come into the office. This is where we need to really look at our partnerships and what more we can do to provide that information and professional development and technical assistance to be able to do the best job we can for that student that walks in and may have no other support. And then our policies, both internal and external, they have to be the right policies. With our new partnerships and resources, we'll be better able to assess what policies are currently in place that may need change and what new policies are needed for students to be successful. CSAC will find it very difficult to reinvent ourselves and the work we plan to do for educational equity if we don't do things differently. Our higher education landscape is shifting as we speak. Therefore, we need to connect with the right partners. We need to identify and secure the right resources to guarantee long-term equity for all. And we must establish or reestablish the right internal and external policies for student success. That's why many of you here today, and many of you all align with the CSAC mission to promote educational equity by making post-secondary educational affordable for all Californians. We are only successful if the students we serve are successful. So now we'll look at the 3 financial aid equity goals and the strategic direction we're leading. Now let's start with the first goal of equitable access. Our CSAC Deputy Director of Policy and Public Affairs, Jake Brimner, will speak on that. Our goal 2 is equitable access, and our CSAC Deputy Director of Program Administration and Services, Tay Kang, will present that. And then our third goal, equitable success, will be presented by our Deputy Director of Data and Research Team, Jessica Moldoff. So Jake, I'll turn that over to you.
Thank you, Catalina, and good morning, everyone. Excited to share with you how we're thinking about the strategic directions that the Student Aid Commission can take to advance our first goal around equitable access. As a reminder, or as a preview of these outcomes for our colleagues here today who weren't able to join us for the last webinar, and a short refresher for those who were, we've identified 4 important outcomes that would help us advance the goal statewide of equitable access. The first is around increasing the number of our high school students who complete a financial aid application by at least 5% in total applications submitted every year. This will help us build on the important work that you all on the Zoom here today have been helping advance in implementation of AB 469 and what we call our All-In campaign, to make sure that students are leaving high school with an understanding about the resources available for them to access degree or training opportunities after they graduate. We know that there's important work for us to do in the state budget and in the policy arena to make sure that when students apply, that there's aid that's available for them to help cover their educational costs. Outcome 1B is to maximize our state resources and eliminate eligibility barriers to reach California's increasing low-income populations. And this gets to that work that Catalina referenced of those external policies. Those policies we're crafting in Sacramento that dictate which students are in or out of our programs, which we know too often are leaving out some of our most low-income and vulnerable students. Outcome 1C gets to how we'll do this work in delivering the message about financial aid and to grow our outreach capacity and enhance partner coordination to address the financial aid literacy gaps in California. If students don't understand what aid is available to them or why a financial aid application matters, the work in towards outcome 1A and 1B won't be fully realized. We need to have a coordinated statewide systemic approach to how we make sure that students and families know about the financial aid that's there to support education beyond high school. And then outcome 1D, supporting our segment partners to educate California students and future learners by collaborating to increase the share of adult learners receiving financial aid for high-impact, short-term career training and credentialing programs. Dr. Gonzalez reminded us about that shifting educational landscape that we're navigating here in California. One of the dynamics that we know we have to respond to, both in how we do our outreach work, but also in how we craft state policies and investments, is looking at the demographic trends in the state, but also the changing nature of the educational and training programs that are being made available to students, and we know lead to really meaningful career opportunities for students. So 4 very important outcomes. How will we get there? How will we realize this important goal for the state of equitable access? On our next slide, we're going to give you a preview of how we look at the way that partnerships, policies, and resources can be leveraged in strategic directions that the Student Aid Commission will undertake to move this work forward. These are just a few examples. As Dr. Gonzalez noted, these aren't on our website yet. These are still in development, but we wanted to give you a flavor of the kind of work that you'll be seeing from the Student Aid Commission in pursuit of these set of goals and outcomes. The first of here is to continue supporting the advancement of the Cal Grant Equity Framework. Outcome 1B, you'd remember, maximizing our state resources and eliminating eligibility barriers that keep students out of aid. We know that there's already adopted state law that needs to be funded that would help achieve that within our landmark Cal Grant program, the largest investment that we manage for students on behalf of the state of California. Collaborating with our K through 12 and higher education segments to support students and families applying for aid. This builds off of the work in both 1A and 1C in looking at how we both support our high school students in applying for aid, implementing AB 469 with all of our local partners across the state, including many of you here today. But it also means we need to look at how we help our students who are already enrolled in college but may not be fully maximizing their financial aid opportunities. How can we better partner with not only our K through 12 districts and high schools, but also with our colleges and universities to make sure that we're leaving no stone unturned and trying to find the financial aid that can help our students pay for their higher education. That also means looking at how we partner with folks who are not at our educational institutions and bringing that message forward about financial aid. One partner that we know really has tremendous reach in getting to a population that's not always been well served by financial aid and often doesn't know about the resources to apply are the adult learners and the working families that are represented by employer organized labor. So we have a strategic direction here in partnering with organized labor unions and others to share information about financial aid programs that support adult learners and working families. These are the types of opportunities where incumbent workers, those who are perhaps going part-time and have an opportunity to better focus and advance in their educational program, move forward in their careers, and perhaps move into a represented position if they can get that financial aid to help them overcome cost. And so often we hear that there's not a realization that even folks who are working can often still qualify for financial aid. And then finally, our CalSUP partners. I know there are several of you here with us today on the Zoom. We have a strategic direction here around collaborating with our CalSUP projects to deepen impact and further expand their reach. And we've been doing great work together in implementing recent state legislation that refocused the CalSUP programs on financial aid application and assistance and financial aid literacy. We want to continue advancing that work using the new data that we're all collecting together to inform best practices and how we can go even further. And then also looking at where additional resources to bring in that theory of change and how we're going to advance all these goals together, bring in additional resources to help support the work that our CalSUP partners are already doing, but also look at how we could further broaden their reach and get into even more communities and to even more students than we're able to serve today. So this is just a taste and a preview of what you can expect to see from the Student Aid Commission in the advancement of equitable access. And now I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Tae Kang, to share more about what you'll see within goal number 2 and equitable support.
Yeah, thank you, Jake, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for being with us this morning and just being part of the ongoing discussion as we look at the CSAC Student Success Blueprint. And as we look at goal number 2, this is just a reminder for the discussion we had in our first webinar, and you can find all of this information on our landing page as well. But just as a reminder, goal 2 is equitable support, or sometimes interchangeably we'll call it equitable aid. But it is to remove financial aid barriers for students as they enter and continue their educational pathway. And the 3 identified outcomes that we have here, again, we're still in the refinement stage. We're meeting internally as a team to just refine these particular outcomes and the strategic decisions. But they are outcome 2A, streamline the Cal Grant renewal process for continuing students by making the process predictable and shorter. And so, as I shared last time, when we think about the Cal Grant renewal process, it always touches a nerve because it's always the last phase of the Cal Grant timeline or cycle, and it's often in the May or June month after we have awarded all the new students, and it just really doesn't serve the purpose for our continuing students. It doesn't give them visibility and early awareness about their Cal Grant. So streamlining that Cal Grant renewal process would be able to do that. Would really give students who are continuing from year 1 to year 2 and so on and so forth, just early awareness about their Cal Grant and making sure that they take action so that their Cal Grant is renewed. The renewal process, we have some rules and conditions in place, and a lot of that can be definitely streamlined and updated to reflect more of a student-centered focus in terms of the renewal process. Outcome 2B is to partner with segments and basic needs organizations, state and federal agencies to deploy technology and data sharing partnerships to expand awareness and streamline access to state and federal programs and services that support student basic needs. As we have had many discussions about financial aid and higher education, recognizing that students today, they face so many different challenges and obstacles, and it's just not about financial aid, the landscape has completely shifted where students need more than financial aid. They need a lot more support, a lot more aid, a lot more funding to just get through the day, to get through the week. And how can we better do that so that we can support our students so they can achieve academically and they can graduate on time? And so that involves a partnership with just not only with institutions, but with basic needs organizations and other entities to ensure that we provide them information and awareness about the other types of programs to really support their needs as they pursue their educational endeavor. And outcome 2C is to reduce administrative burdens for students by eliminating redundant applications and institutional processes through increased data sharing, specifically for special population programs and newly established or amended programs. I think within financial aid, we love having a lot of different applications for various programs, but throughout the years, many of those applications have become so redundant, it's become duplicative, and students are just finding a lot more confusion having to fill out this application, that application, and then as they do that, it becomes so frustrating that they give up. And we can't continue that practice. And so this is really looking at the administrative burdens, the different types of applications, where are students getting stuck, where are students getting stopped in terms of the complete application process. And as you know, we do have many other programs at the Student Aid Commission that's more than Cal Grant. And each of these programs have their own unique applications. So what is it that we can do to streamline that and have a more of a centralized application so students are not having to do multiple applications. So as we want to make this goal a reality, the CSAC team will take the lead on having internal efforts, looking at all of these outcomes, and then also fostering the collaborations with education segment partners like yourselves and leveraging statewide technology. And as we know, technology is always changing. And also just building the infrastructure to enhance our system, but also enhance yours as well. And by aligning with our educational leaders and financial aid professionals and stakeholders, we hope to achieve meaningful, measurable progress towards equity in financial aid access and delivery. Next slide. So as we transition to the strategic directions to achieve these outcomes, we've listed 4 example strategic directions. And as Jake had mentioned, these are just a preview of some of the examples that we have come up with internally. To implement these strategies, they will require building the new partnerships or strengthening our existing ones, because we have a lot of great partnerships that we have right now, but what is it that we can do to just build off of those? Policy changes that could just be internal, like the renewal process. Could it just mean changing our internal rules, or does it require some legislative changes to really help set the framework of what that change will be doing, and will it be supported legislatively? And of course, the new resources that will be through additional funding to help support our staff, and also through different philanthropic efforts. And so as we look at the example strategic directions, we talked about the renewal process, and we wanted to prioritize this with our existing work group, the Financial Aid Advisory Board. These are our experts in financial aid, and also solicit the ideas and feedback of other campus financial aid staff, specifically the Cal Grant coordinators who do this on a day in and day out basis, and really develop a new Cal Grant renewal process for the upcoming 25-26 age year, so that it's ready to go and students are able to start getting renewed much earlier in the process. Secondly, it is to convene a cross-segmental work group to streamline eligibility and application processes for California's growing special programs. Again, as I mentioned, we have many different non-Cal Grant programs, middle class scholarship, Golden State Teachers, Chafee Grant program, and each of those have their own specific individual applications. So let's convene this work group to see where we can streamline that eligibility and where we can get some of that data data sharing to help fill in some of that data, pre-fill that data so that the student doesn't necessarily have to apply multiple times. And then partnering with other state agencies, community-based organizations, and local government to increase participation in special programs, including social services like CalFresh, investment agencies like CalKids, and other basic needs organizations. And this really will give us a holistic perspective of financial aid. Financial aid just doesn't begin when the student is entering from their senior year of high school into their freshman year of college. It really should begin much earlier, just that awareness, and then also investing for the future through like 529 plans and just having earlier awareness of what is financial aid and start really embedding those thoughts early on. So having that holistic perspective, and even when you are receiving financial aid, you all students also need other support beyond financial aid to really help them get through their day and their week. And if we can do 1, 2, and 3 well, then 4 will be a byproduct, which is enhancing our current web grants for students to add a non-financial aid or basic needs card, meaning that we need to enhance our technology. We really need to improve and update our web grants for students. It provides information now to our students, and students can do some basic actions on there, but we're really just scratching the surface in terms of what students can do within web grants for students. So if we're able to embed and incorporate more information about CalFresh and CalKids and other types of non-financially support programs within web grants for students, just give them that information and say, based upon the information that you're receiving, or you're based on your eligibility, you may be eligible for these other types of programs. So it's really leveraging that technology to enhance and improve our web grants for students. And so the strategic direction for number 4 is really, if we can do those other 3 things well, then this will be a byproduct of those outcomes. All right, so with that, I want to hand it over to Deputy Director Moldoff to cover goal number 3.
Thank you, Tay. So goal number 3 is equitable success, which in many ways is the outcome of all these outcomes. If everything above this goal falls into place, then we hope that we can really prove the actual result through these success goals. And with that, so outcome 3A is, again, it's a metric we already have, increased paid rates for eligible applicants across all programs to ensure resources reach California students in time. Namely, that we want to make sure that the students that we make offers to end up being the students that get paid. So a pay rate is, again, we know who gets paid because we need to send the money out. But it's only one part of the story. The other part is coming from 3B, which is a metric we do not have. And that is to make student outcome data actionable by supporting California leaders to increase investments in financial aid that create pathways to reach students with the highest equity gaps. So again, as I had mentioned before, in the leading metrics, we want to make sure that with the pay rate and the outcome data is disaggregated by different student demographics, race, ethnicity, gender, income, region, to make sure that we that our programs are serving students in the same way across the board. But really highlighting that this is talking about outcome data. So right now, we know who gets paid, but we don't know if those payments actually result in more students persisting, more students graduating, more students getting living wages, better wages on the other side. And that kind of information is very important when it comes to tight financial years such as we're in right now, when the California's leaders really have to think about there's a finite amount of money, where should those investments be? By having the outcome data about persistence and graduation and employment, we can really be better advocates for our students in a way that is undeniable. If the data is there about financially being a worthwhile investment, which is something we all kind of inherently know, and know anecdotally, but having the data is what would really speak volumes about it. And with that, I'll go into the next slide about what this means in terms of how do we see this success happening? What sort of things can we do? What needs to change regarding partnerships, policies, and resources? So first, some of the examples of the strategic directions here is that we're going to receive that outcome data through a combination of hopefully Cradle to Career and the National Student Clearinghouse will be able, and also EDD for wage data, will be able to produce annual reports, reporting on persistence and graduation rates, hopefully also the income data, depending on how that ends up looking. And this is really to make sure that we can disaggregate it as well, because we are able at this time to receive aggregate data about persistence and graduation, but without actually having that individual level data for different subgroups, we wouldn't be able to say what programs are working best for what types of students, where should the dollars be redirected in order to make the biggest impact for those students who need it most. Number 2 is collaborate with higher education segments on data sharing to streamline aid eligibility. So this is going back to that 3A goal about what can we do to increase paid rates? What sort of data sharing can happen on the back end to make sure things are more streamlined, that the aid can get to the students who are there, who are eligible, removing some of those manual processes that students are often get stuck on, either because something's not being communicated to their financial aid office, or something's not being communicated to CSAC. Just by removing, again, those sorts of administrative barriers, not just for students, but also for financial aid offices, we can hope to make the process smoother for everyone. And likewise, number 3 is improving our own internal processes. So how can we leverage that data sharing in order to improve things on our end? What sort of changes can we make to current ed code in order to make sure that we're receiving the data we need in order to serve students better? And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Dr. Gonzalez. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Next slide, please. Thank you, Shelveen. So colleagues, it's 9:52 a.m. and we've been answering questions, a lot of just gratitude, but now is the time where I ask you for help. You saw this slide if you joined us last time. A part of the work that we're doing is just keeping you up to date and being vulnerable with where we are in our innovation, in our creativity. But the reality is that we need to innovate, we need to change. And so if you could all take out your phones, if you haven't done so already, we would love your feedback. And it could be anything. A really important set of feedback that we have received is really more around your first thought of what might be missing or what is unclear. And that really helps us as we're working on that final document. So this is the same QR code that I shared with you at the beginning. It was also shared in our chat. So you could also just click on the feedback form link that Daniela posted at 9:09 a.m. And then I'm going to go to the next slide. Because even though you submit your feedback online, there are still a few more steps for us that I want to share with you and invite you to be a part of. So number 1, the landing page is going to continue to be updated, especially as we go live with our commissioner meeting agenda in December. The second thing is we continue to have a few more events. I have 2 more tomorrow. Most of them are on Zoom, 1 in person on Friday in Sacramento, and just sharing our vision, but also asking for help to improve this work. We all have a role to play as we think about innovation and better serving California students. And the truth is CSAC is just trying to innovate and be a part of the solution. And then on December 5th, our commissioners will see a completed draft. We're calling it a draft because we are moving forward with adopting this work in concept. It will mean that this is a living document and that it will not be finalized until our March meeting. So what you see on here is on the 5th, our commissioners will see a full draft. That's that 10-page single-space document that I was sharing with you that will be uploaded to the agenda meeting. We'll have a really big stamp that says draft. It won't even be formatted. I know that because we're coming to the final days and trying to meet those deadlines. But what I can tell you is between December 6th and March of 2025, which is when the commissioners would meet again, the CSAC team and I are going to continue to refine. Why that time frame? A lot of things are shifting for us. You all also know that we have the state budget that comes out every year on January 10th. We'd like to integrate some of the statewide work being done as well when we think about the Career Education Master Plan. And so our December action from the staff recommendation from me would be adopting in concept while giving us a runway for CSAC and financial aid to adapt to all the evolving landscape that will emerge when we head into January. So with that in mind, I want to take down the slides and ask Jake and Catalina, any final thoughts as you were looking at the Q&A chat, as you were hearing our colleagues present? Just want to ask if there's anything that you observed, right? That we think of as we're hearing everyone present and then as we're seeing the comments come in.
No, just thank you for the support, for you being here early in this morning on a busy day, your work day that's filled with other jobs and working with students. And thank you for being here and how we know the importance of what our change means for you. And that's why we also need to hear from you if we're missing anything, as Dr. Gonzalez had mentioned. Speak up now, as you know, 5 years will go by quickly. And so we need to hear what your needs are, and we need to see what more we can do. And as a state agency here, serving all segments, we have the opportunity to be able to implement things that impact everyone and ultimately the students the best. So giving you that opportunity to speak now, come to our website, give us feedback, and through this process, we have open ears and ready to listen and hear what we need to do to support you.
Well said. I don't have much to add other than another thank you for all of our partners that are here, and in the spirit of what we discussed around the importance of policies, resources, and partnerships, and to the point around the important feedback you can all give us to refine this blueprint. This is a shared vision. It's one that we will only realize doing it together. And I just so much appreciate seeing so many of our great partners in the Q&A chat today. And also you already seeing yourselves, hopefully, in this vision and how we can connect other policies and resources that we already have in place and those that we know are in development to help advance this collective work on behalf of students. So thank you all.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Catalina. I'm on the Q&A chat. Want to redirect us back to our landing page and giving us that feedback. We will continue to make changes up until the very end. You will likely see a document be uploaded on December 2nd, that 10-page document that I mentioned. Other than that, I know there's a lot of work ahead for us, and especially as we head into December 1st. So just a deep, deep gratitude that you are able to balance both, right? The reality of the lived experience for you as professionals and for your students, and then being able to think 5 years ahead about the future that needs to exist for all of us, but especially for our students and their families. So with that, it's 9:58 a.m. We will upload this video and all the tools to our website, and I look forward to seeing you all on December 2nd for our All In and Ready webinar series. That is our first webinar series as we're launching the 25-26 financial aid cycle. And then if any of you are able to join us as we head into our commissioner meeting to just be a part of that journey as a part of the work that CSAC has been leading, I'm really grateful to be here with all of you and to serve alongside all of the team at CSAC. And we're very, very grateful for your work every single day. So with that, we are ending on time, 9:59 a.m. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Have a great week.